"There's a camera in your office," the waitress whispered. Then the billionaire unmasked his fiancée. The morning sunlight spilled across the city, turning the glass windows of towering skyscrapers into shining mirrors. Inside one of these tall buildings, Alexander Reed sat behind his massive oak desk, reviewing the latest reports from his tech company. He was a man known for precision and attention to detail, but today, even he felt a slight restlessness he couldn't explain. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional ring of his phone. Alexander had always preferred this early hour for work. The city outside was awake, buzzing with life, but up here, in the high-rise, it felt like time moved slower. The view from his office overlooked the streets below, where people rushed to their jobs, cars honked impatiently, and the rhythm of daily life went on without pause. He had built his empire from scratch, rising from a small startup to a billion-dollar company, but he knew that success came with its own set of dangers. Trust was a luxury, and betrayal could be hiding behind a smile. On this particular morning, Alexander was reviewing designs for a new product line, a series of smart devices meant to revolutionize home security. His mind was deeply focused when a soft knock interrupted the silence. He looked up to see a young woman standing at the entrance of his office. She carried a tray with his usual order from the cafe downstairs: a black coffee, a sandwich neatly wrapped, and a small cup of fresh fruit. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she said politely, her voice soft but confident. She wore the uniform of the catering service that supplied the company, and her name tag read Maya. "Morning, Maya," Alexander replied, giving a brief smile. "Thank you. You didn't have to come up here so early." "It's part of the service, sir," she said with a polite nod. "I hope you like the breakfast." She carefully placed the tray on his desk, arranging everything just so. Alexander was used to the routine of staff bringing him meals, but there was something different about Maya. She seemed more attentive than most. Her eyes moved constantly, scanning the office as if noticing details that others would miss. Alexander caught her gaze lingering briefly on the far corner of the room. Before he could ask about it, Maya hesitated, her lips moving as if deciding whether to speak. Finally, she leaned slightly closer and whispered, almost too quietly for him to hear. "There's a camera in your office," she said. Alexander froze. The words hung in the air, strange and jarring against the backdrop of his normal morning. He blinked and stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. A camera? In his office? It was hard to believe. He had spent years building this company and protecting every secret within it. The idea that someone might be watching him, recording his actions without permission, was unnerving. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "Yes, sir," Maya replied. "I noticed it when I came in. It's small, hidden near the ceiling corner, but I saw the lens. I didn't touch anything, I just wanted to warn you." Alexander's mind raced. He had dealt with corporate espionage before, but usually it came in the form of hacked emails or stolen files. He had never expected it to be this personal, right in his own office. The idea of someone secretly observing him, perhaps taking notes or filming, made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He stood up and walked toward the corner she had indicated. Indeed, there it was, a tiny, black camera, almost invisible against the dark paint of the wall. Its lens caught the light of the morning sun streaming through the windows. Alexander's sharp mind immediately began to assess the situation. Someone had gone to great lengths to place it here without being noticed. The camera wasn't just a threat, it was a message. Maya watched silently, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She had done her part by pointing it out, but she had no idea who might have placed it or why. Alexander turned to her, his expression serious. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "You may have just prevented a serious problem. Can I ask, did anyone see you come in or notice you near the camera?" "No, sir," she replied. I made sure no one was around when I noticed it. I didn't want to touch anything or interfere just to alert you." Alexander nodded. There was something honest in her voice, a clarity that made him trust her immediately. He knew better than to dismiss the warning, and he knew that action had to be taken carefully. He walked back to his desk, his mind already planning the next steps. He decided not to alert the office staff just yet. If the person who placed the camera realized it had been discovered, they might try to remove it or cover their tracks. Alexander needed information first. He needed to know who was watching him and why. As he sat back down, he glanced at Maya again. "You've got a good eye," he said. "Not many people would notice something like that." Maya smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and relief on her face. "I just pay attention, sir. Sometimes the small things matter most." Her words lingered with him. Alexander had spent years learning to notice patterns, to read people, and to predict outcomes. Yet it was this young woman, a complete outsider to his corporate world, who had seen something critical. The thought intrigued him and reminded him that sometimes the truth came from unexpected places. He poured himself a cup of coffee, his hands steady despite the surge of adrenaline running through him. The morning had started like any other, but now it had turned into a puzzle he had to solve. He would have to review the office layout, check for other possible hidden devices, and perhaps even look at the people closest to him with new eyes. Meanwhile, Maya quietly stepped back, giving him space. She had done what she could, and now she waited, her curiosity tinged with nervousness. She wondered who would dare spy on someone like Alexander Reed. The thought sent a shiver through her, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She was just a waitress. Her job was to serve, not to interfere with corporate secrets. Alexander, however, could not ignore it. The camera had changed everything. It was a warning, a signal that someone was paying attention to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He knew he had to act carefully, like a chess player thinking several moves ahead. One wrong step could alert the person behind this, and he had too much at stake to allow that. As he finished his breakfast, his mind raced through possibilities. Could it be a rival company trying to steal designs? Or perhaps someone from inside, someone he trusted? The idea of betrayal from within was more unsettling than any outside threat. Alexander had always believed that loyalty was earned, but this morning reminded him that vigilance was essential. Maya finally spoke again, breaking the silence. "Sir, do you want me to leave?" she asked. "No," Alexander replied. "Stay for a moment. I may need your help, or at least your perspective. Sometimes it helps to have an outside view." She nodded, surprised but willing. She had never been involved in anything like this before, yet here she was, standing in the center of a real-life mystery. The ordinary morning had transformed into something extraordinary. What began as a routine breakfast delivery had now become a turning point, one that could reveal hidden truths and perhaps change lives forever. The office, once quiet and calm, now held an air of tension. Alexander knew that every movement, every conversation, every glance might matter. And as he glanced once more at the tiny camera, he felt a determination stir within him. Whoever had placed it had underestimated him, and underestimated Maya. Together, he thought, they might just uncover what was hidden, piece by piece, and reveal a truth no one had expected. The morning sunlight continued to flood the office, but its warmth was now mingled with a quiet urgency. A day that had started like any other had turned into the beginning of a careful, calculated journey, a journey that would test trust, reveal secrets, and show that even in a world of wealth and power, the smallest details could change everything. After discovering the hidden camera, Alexander Reed could not shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over him. The office, which usually felt like a place of control and order, now seemed strangely unfamiliar. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows no longer felt warm. It seemed almost too bright, exposing every corner, every hidden detail. Alexander knew he had to act carefully. Whoever had placed that camera had done so deliberately. It was not a random act. It was precise, calculated, and meant to be secret. He leaned back in his chair, letting his eyes sweep across the office. Every item, every piece of furniture, every framed certificate on the wall now carried a hint of suspicion. Could someone have hidden another device elsewhere? Was this camera the only one? The thought made his chest tighten. He had always believed in trusting the people closest to him, but now he realized that trust could be dangerous. Maya, the young waitress who had discovered the camera, was still standing nearby. She seemed both curious and nervous. Alexander could see that she wanted to leave, but something made her stay. A quiet determination to help, perhaps, or maybe just the natural curiosity that came with noticing something out of place. "Sit down for a moment," Alexander said. "I might need your perspective." Maya hesitated but obeyed. She took a chair across from his desk, careful not to disturb anything. Alexander's mind was already moving, thinking through the steps he needed to take. First, he had to understand the camera, its origin, who might have placed it, and why. But second, and perhaps more importantly, he had to consider the people closest to him. Trust was always risky, but right now, it was necessary to think clearly. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Check the security system logs from the past week," he instructed. "I want to see if there has been any unusual activity in the office or near my private workspace. And be discreet. No one else should know about this yet." "Yes, sir," the assistant replied, though Alexander could hear the curiosity in her voice. He hung up, satisfied that the first step had been taken. Then he turned to Maya. "You noticed the camera immediately. That tells me you have a sharp eye for details. Did you see anything else unusual? Any signs that someone might have been watching, or anyone who acted strangely?" Maya thought for a moment. "No one seemed out of place today," she said. "But yesterday, I remember a delivery man who stayed longer than he should have in the lobby. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it seems connected. He was polite and professional, but he kept glancing at the elevators and the office doors like he was looking for something." Alexander nodded slowly. That detail might be important. Often, the smallest observations led to the biggest discoveries. He made a mental note to review the building's security footage, focusing on that delivery man and anyone else who might have been in the area. As he sipped his coffee, Alexander's thoughts drifted to his fiancée, Isabella. She had always been a graceful, intelligent woman, charming and charismatic in public. He trusted her completely, or at least he had. Now, with the camera discovered, he could not ignore the possibility that someone close to him might be involved. The thought made him uneasy, but he reminded himself to remain calm. Jumping to conclusions could be dangerous. Alexander decided that the next step was to investigate discreetly. He did not want to alarm anyone, especially Isabella, but he needed to know the truth. He called a private investigator he had worked with before, someone experienced in corporate espionage. "I have a sensitive situation," Alexander explained carefully over the phone. "I need a thorough investigation, but it must be discreet. There's a hidden camera in my office. I want to know who placed it, when, and why." "Understood," the investigator replied. "I'll start immediately. You'll have a report within a few days." Alexander hung up and turned his attention back to Maya. "You did the right thing by alerting me. I think this camera was not an accident. Someone wanted to watch closely. I need you to keep an eye out too, but don't interfere directly. Just observe and tell me if anything seems unusual." Maya nodded, though her heart beat faster at the responsibility she had been given. She had never imagined that delivering breakfast could lead to being part of something so important. Yet, she felt a strange sense of purpose. Sometimes, she thought, the smallest actions could make the biggest difference. Over the next few days, Alexander's office was filled with quiet tension. He went about his normal work, meeting with staff, reviewing reports and planning new projects, but always with a careful eye. Every conversation, every visitor, every unexpected sound caught his attention. He reviewed security footage from the building, looking for anyone who seemed out of place or suspicious. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. There were subtle hints of behavior that had gone unnoticed before. A few employees seemed unusually curious about Alexander's schedule. A courier had lingered in the lobby longer than necessary. Even Isabella's own movements appeared to carry a pattern that did not entirely make sense. Alexander noted each detail quietly, carefully, without letting anyone suspect his awareness. One evening, Alexander decided to review the camera footage from the hidden device. He connected it to a secure laptop and watched, frame by frame. The footage was grainy, but it revealed something shocking. Someone had indeed been inside the office at night, moving quietly, looking at files, checking computers. The person's face was partially obscured, but Alexander recognized the posture, the gestures, and the way they moved. It was familiar, far too familiar. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Could it be someone he trusted, someone he never suspected? The possibility was terrifying. Alexander had always believed in the loyalty of those close to him, but this evidence suggested otherwise. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. He had faced challenges before, but this was personal. Maya came by the office the next morning to deliver his breakfast. Alexander greeted her with a measured smile. "Good morning," he said. "I need you to help me observe carefully today. Watch for anything unusual, people entering offices, moving in strange ways, anything that feels off. I don't want to alarm anyone, just observe." Maya agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had never been part of a situation like this, but she trusted Alexander's judgment. As she moved through the office, she noticed small details. The way some employees whispered in corners, the way Isabella sometimes seemed distracted during calls, and the way the security guard occasionally paused near the elevators longer than expected. Each observation added to the growing picture Alexander was piecing together. He knew he needed to remain patient, to wait for the full story to reveal itself. Acting too soon could alert the person behind the camera and ruin his chance to uncover the truth. That evening, Alexander and Maya sat quietly in his office, reviewing their notes. He explained the importance of every detail, every small observation. Maya realized that what seemed ordinary could often hide extraordinary meaning. Alexander, too, realized that trust needed to be earned continuously, and even the people closest to him could not be assumed loyal without proof. Days passed, and the tension grew. Alexander noticed subtle shifts in behavior around him. Isabella seemed distant, yet polite, always smiling, but sometimes her eyes held something he could not yet identify. Employees acted normally, but Alexander knew better than to take appearances at face value. He watched, waited, and collected information, like a careful detective following a trail. Finally, the private investigator called with a preliminary report. The evidence was beginning to point towards someone very close to Alexander. Files had been accessed, information had been shared in unusual ways, and the hidden camera had captured moments that were not visible to ordinary office surveillance. Alexander felt a mixture of relief and dread. Relief that the investigation was uncovering the truth, but dread at what that truth might mean. He looked at Maya and said quietly, "You were right to tell me about the camera. Without that, none of this would have been discovered." Sometimes the smallest act of observation can reveal the greatest secrets. Maya smiled faintly, feeling proud and a little anxious. She had never imagined that her simple job could lead to something so important. She had learned that paying attention mattered, that courage sometimes came from noticing what others overlooked. As the evening light faded and the city outside began to glow with countless lights, Alexander sat at his desk, deep in thought. He knew that the next steps would be critical. The truth was close, and soon the person behind the hidden camera would be revealed. And when that moment came, Alexander would be ready, not only to uncover the secret but to face the consequences, whatever they might be. The quiet in the office was no longer just calm. It was tense, alive with anticipation. Every shadow, every sound, every movement could be a clue. And Alexander, with Maya quietly observing beside him, knew that the ordinary office, the ordinary days, had become a battlefield of truth and deception. For the first time, Alexander realized that vigilance and observation were not just tools for business. They were tools for survival, for understanding, and for protecting the life he had built. And with Maya's unexpected help, he had a chance to uncover the truth before it was too late. Alexander Reed's office had grown quiet again, but the calm was deceptive. Behind the glass walls and polished floors, a storm of questions and suspicions brewed. The hidden camera had been discovered, the initial observations made, and the preliminary investigation had begun. Yet, the truth was still just out of reach, like a shadow hiding in the corners of the office. Alexander knew that patience would be as important as action, and every small detail could hold the key to revealing what, or who, was behind this breach. The following morning, Alexander arrived earlier than usual. The city was just waking up, and the streets below were busy with commuters. He moved through the office with his usual composure, yet his eyes flicked constantly to corners, doors, and employees' desks. Every interaction, every smile, every casual movement seemed to carry hidden meaning. Alexander had always been attentive, but now he was hyper-aware. The hidden camera had reminded him that appearances could be deceiving. Maya entered shortly afterward, carrying the usual breakfast tray. She had become more confident over the past days, aware that her observations had real value. She placed the tray on Alexander's desk and gave him a polite nod. "Good morning," she said. "I've noticed a few things today. Some of the staff have been lingering near your office more than usual, and I saw Isabella take a long phone call in the conference room this morning, looking concerned afterward. It might not mean anything, but I thought I should tell you." Alexander nodded, his mind already racing. Every piece of information, no matter how small, could become important. "Thank you, Maya. Keep observing, but do not interfere. Just pay attention to patterns, people's actions, timing, who goes where. Sometimes the smallest clues tell the biggest story." As Maya left, Alexander turned his attention to the footage collected by the hidden camera. He had reviewed it once, but now he wanted to study it carefully, frame by frame. He noticed subtle movements, someone moving quickly in the shadows, checking drawers, glancing at computer screens, and sometimes pausing as if listening. The footage revealed someone confident, yet cautious, aware that their presence must remain unnoticed. The person's posture and gestures were familiar, though Alexander could not immediately identify them. He paused the video and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Whoever it was, they had insider knowledge of the office layout, the schedules, and the locations of sensitive materials. The camera had been placed not by a stranger, but by someone who understood the rhythm of the office. Later that day, Alexander arranged for a discreet meeting with his private investigator. They sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, hidden from view, but in a location that allowed observation of surrounding streets and office buildings. Alexander handed over the notes he had compiled, including Maya's observations and his own. "I need a careful, thorough investigation," Alexander said. "No one can know that I suspect anyone in particular. This must remain confidential. Review staff schedules, communications, and any unusual behavior over the past month. Focus on anyone with access to sensitive areas or confidential information." The investigator nodded. "We will start immediately. Expect updates daily. The key is patience." Most people reveal themselves through patterns, not single actions. Watch for consistency in behavior, and we'll know who is behind this. Returning to the office, Alexander felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The city outside continued its relentless pace, but inside his office, time felt suspended. Each day brought new observations, new patterns, and new questions. Isabella continued her routine, but small inconsistencies began to stand out to Alexander. She was attentive and polite, but sometimes she seemed distracted, her focus shifting unexpectedly during conversations or meetings. Alexander also observed interactions between staff members. Some employees seemed unusually curious about his schedule or discussions, while others appeared nervous when he approached. Maya quietly noted these patterns as well, providing Alexander with details he might have otherwise missed. Her observations became a crucial supplement to the formal investigation. One afternoon, Alexander decided to conduct a subtle test. He arranged a private meeting in the office with a few trusted team members, discussing a fictitious project while casually monitoring reactions. Everyone appeared calm, but subtle reactions told a different story. A few employees glanced toward the hidden corners of the office, as if expecting something. Others seemed unusually attentive to minor details. The pattern was emerging. Someone was closely watching, someone who wanted to know more than they should. Alexander reviewed security logs again, this time focusing on the exact times when certain employees had access to the office during unusual hours. One name appeared more than once, and the movements aligned with the footage captured by the hidden camera. He did not confront anyone yet, knowing it was too early. Gathering evidence quietly was essential. Meanwhile, Maya noticed more subtle signs. Isabella occasionally left her phone unattended, and Alexander noticed her checking messages quickly, as if worried someone would see. Maya also observed employees talking quietly in corners, their body language suggesting secrecy. These small observations, when pieced together, began forming a picture that Alexander could follow. Days turned into a week. Alexander reviewed all data, organized notes, and connected patterns. The private investigator provided updates, confirming that some staff members were acting suspiciously. More importantly, they discovered that certain files had been accessed and copied during times when only a few people had clearance. Alexander realized that someone he trusted, or at least thought he could trust, was manipulating information and possibly sharing it with external parties. One evening, as Alexander worked late, he reviewed footage from the hidden camera again. The figure captured moving through the office was deliberate, careful, and familiar. The way they moved, the timing of their steps, the gestures, they all pointed to someone close to him. His mind raced through possibilities, and one thought began to dominate: Isabella. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the suspicion. She had always been attentive, intelligent, and caring, yet the evidence seemed to suggest otherwise. Alexander knew he could not jump to conclusions, but he also knew that he could not ignore what he was seeing. Patience was crucial, but the investigation had to move forward. Alexander called Maya into his office. "I need your help with something very specific," he said. "Observe Isabella over the next few days discreetly. Watch her routine, her movements, how she interacts with staff, and whether anything unusual occurs. Do not interfere and do not speak to anyone about this." Maya nodded, understanding the gravity of the task. She had learned that small observations could reveal great truths. Over the next few days, she noticed subtle patterns. Isabella taking calls in secluded areas, occasionally hiding messages, and appearing tense when certain topics arose. Nothing confirmed wrongdoing yet, but the pieces were aligning in a way that demanded closer scrutiny. Alexander continued to cross-reference all observations with security footage and investigator reports. Slowly, a web of information began to form. The hidden camera had been only one part of a larger puzzle. Every detail, every unusual action, every whispered conversation contributed to a clearer picture of potential betrayal. Alexander remained methodical, knowing that revealing the truth too soon could allow the person behind it to cover their tracks. Then, one evening, the private investigator called with a critical update. "We have a preliminary conclusion," they said. "Patterns of access, movement, and communications point towards someone very close to you. We have enough to start connecting dots, but caution is still required." Alexander's heart pounded, but he remained calm. He thanked the investigator and ended the call, then leaned back in his chair, thinking about the next steps. The truth was close. He knew that careful planning, careful observation, and a patient approach would soon reveal the person behind the hidden camera. And when that moment came, there would be no room for error. Maya observed silently from her usual spot. She had never imagined that her small role, simply noticing the camera, would lead to involvement in something so significant. She had learned that attention to detail, honesty, and courage could change the course of events, even in the most unexpected ways. Alexander reflected on the past week. The office, once a place of ordinary routines and daily tasks, had become a place of vigilance and quiet investigation. He had learned that trust was fragile, that appearances could be deceptive, and that even the people closest to him could act in ways he had never imagined. But he also knew that by being careful, methodical, and observant, he could uncover the truth and protect everything he had built. As the city lights outside began to twinkle in the early evening, Alexander sat alone in his office, reviewing notes and footage. The hidden camera had revealed a reality he could not ignore. The investigation was intensifying, and soon all the pieces would come together. He felt a sense of determination and clarity. The truth was approaching, and when it arrived, he would be ready, not only to confront it but to understand it fully. The ordinary world outside continued its endless rhythm, unaware of the quiet tension inside Alexander's office. But inside, every shadow, every movement, every small detail mattered. And with Maya's keen eyes and the investigator's careful work, the hidden truths were beginning to emerge, one careful step at a time. The stage was set for revelation, and Alexander knew that soon, the hidden patterns would lead to a confrontation that could change everything. Patience, observation, and preparation were his allies, and the next chapter of this quiet, intense investigation was about to unfold. Alexander Reed felt a quiet tension in the office that day. Everything seemed ordinary, the sunlight spilling across the polished floors, the soft hum of computers, the occasional murmur of employees. Yet beneath the surface, everything had changed. The hidden camera, the careful observations, and the investigator's reports had revealed enough to suggest a troubling truth. Someone close to him, someone he trusted, had been acting in secret. He sat behind his desk, reviewing the final reports and footage, his fingers tapping lightly on the wood. Isabella, his fiancée, had entered the office earlier as usual, smiling and attentive, but now Alexander saw her differently. Each glance, each gesture, each pause seemed to carry hidden meaning. The person who had placed the camera had insider knowledge, and all signs pointed to someone very close. Alexander's mind replayed the footage, connecting small details he had initially ignored. The way she glanced at her phone after a delivery, her tense expressions during calls, the unusual access to sensitive files. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. The moment had come. He could not delay any longer. The confrontation had to happen, but carefully. He could not act out of anger. He needed clarity and evidence. The stakes were too high for mistakes. Alexander called Maya into the office. She arrived quickly, carrying the usual tray of breakfast items, but today her expression was more serious. Alexander motioned for her to sit. "Maya," he began quietly, We're about to take the next step. I have enough information to know that the person behind the hidden camera is very close to me. I need you to observe carefully today. Stay discreet and watch for anything that confirms or contradicts what we already know." Maya nodded. She had become a silent ally over the past week, providing observations that helped Alexander piece together the truth. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The office had transformed into a place of quiet investigation, and she was now part of it. As the day progressed, Alexander continued his normal routine, attending meetings and reviewing documents, all while observing Isabella and others around him. Isabella appeared calm and attentive, but small tells began to appear, slight hesitations, subtle glances at her phone, quick expressions of concern that she tried to hide. Alexander's intuition told him that the time for confrontation was near. That evening, he invited Isabella to a private meeting in his office. She arrived as usual, smiling politely, unaware of the gravity of the situation. Alexander gestured for her to sit across from him. "Isabella," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I need to talk to you about something important." She tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Of course, Alexander. What is it?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Over the past week, I discovered a hidden camera in my office. I've reviewed the footage, and I've conducted a careful investigation. Patterns have emerged that cannot be ignored. I need you to be honest with me." Isabella's expression remained neutral, but there was a subtle flicker of tension in her eyes. Alexander continued, presenting the evidence piece by piece. He described the unusual access to files, the movements recorded on the hidden camera, and the patterns of behavior that had raised suspicion. As he spoke, Isabella's calm exterior began to falter. Small signs, tiny changes in posture, quick breaths, a shift in her gaze, betrayed the tension building inside her. Alexander noticed every detail. He had learned over the years that small cues often revealed the truth more clearly than words. I don't understand," Isabella said, her voice slightly trembling. "I would never do anything to betray you or the company." Alexander remained composed. "The evidence does not lie. The patterns, the access, the movements, they point to someone with knowledge of the office, someone who could move unnoticed. Isabella, I trusted you, but the facts cannot be ignored." Isabella's hands clenched slightly in her lap. Her eyes darted around the office as if searching for an explanation. "Alexander, she began, but her voice faltered. Alexander paused, letting the silence stretch. Sometimes silence revealed more than words. Maya, observing discreetly from a nearby spot, noted Isabella's shifting expressions and quick glances. Every movement added clarity to the picture Alexander had been piecing together. "I need you to explain," Alexander said quietly but firmly. "If there's nothing to hide, then this is the moment to show it. I need truth, Isabella, not excuses." Isabella's eyes filled with emotion. She had maintained her composure in public, but now, confronted with undeniable evidence, cracks began to appear. I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you." Alexander's heart pounded, but he remained calm. He had prepared for this moment. "Tell me everything," he said. "No omissions. I need to understand why this happened and who else may be involved." Isabella swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. "I thought I could protect someone," she said. "I didn't think it would go this far. I made mistakes, and I didn't know how to stop it." Alexander listened carefully, noting every word, every hesitation, every change in tone. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together. He had suspected for days, but now the confirmation was in front of him. He realized that trust, once broken, required clarity to rebuild, or a decision to end it. "Who else is involved?" Alexander asked quietly. "Were you acting alone, or is someone else behind this?" Isabella hesitated, her eyes flicking downward. "I acted with someone I thought I could trust. I didn't realize the consequences until it was too late. Alexander nodded slowly, processing the information. The betrayal was deeper than he had imagined, but his focus remained on understanding the full truth. He knew that anger could blind him, but careful observation would reveal everything he needed to know. Maya, still observing, noted Isabella's posture, her quick breaths, and the subtle tension in her hands. Every small detail confirmed Alexander's suspicions. He felt a mixture of relief and sadness, relief that the truth was emerging, and sadness that someone so close had been involved in deception. Alexander leaned back slightly, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I appreciate your honesty now, Isabella," he said. "It doesn't undo the past, but it helps me understand what happened. You must understand that trust is fragile. Actions like this cannot be ignored." Isabella nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Alexander remained composed, though his mind raced with thoughts about the future. The office, once a place of routine and calm, had become a place of revelation and confrontation. The hidden camera had uncovered a secret that could not remain hidden any longer. Over the next hour, Alexander and Isabella discussed the events in detail. He asked questions, noted inconsistencies, and carefully pieced together the full story. Maya observed quietly, understanding that her small role in noticing the camera had led to this crucial moment. Without her attention, the truth might never have emerged. By the end of the conversation, Alexander had a clear understanding of the situation. The evidence, the investigation, and Isabella's own admissions painted a picture that could not be denied. He realized that decisions had to be made, decisions about trust, responsibility, and the future. As Isabella left the office later that evening, Alexander remained seated at his desk, reflecting on the events of the past days. The confrontation had revealed the truth, but it had also revealed the complexity of human behavior, how fear, secrecy, and misplaced trust could lead to mistakes. Maya approached quietly, carrying the empty breakfast tray. "It's done," she said softly. Alexander nodded, appreciating her presence. "Yes, it is, and thanks to you, the truth came to light." Maya smiled faintly, feeling a quiet pride. She had never imagined that noticing a small hidden camera could lead to uncovering such an important secret. Her observations had been crucial, and she realized that paying attention, being honest, and having courage, even in small ways, could make a real difference. Alexander looked out at the city skyline as the sun dipped below the horizon. The lights of the buildings glowed warmly and the streets below bustled with life. Inside his office, the tension had lifted, replaced by clarity. The confrontation had been difficult but necessary. The truth, once hidden, had been revealed. He reflected on trust, betrayal, and responsibility. He knew that moving forward required careful thought, planning, and vigilance. The hidden camera had been only the beginning, a small detail that led to a much larger discovery. Alexander realized that in both life and business, attention to detail, patience, and careful observation were invaluable tools. The office, once again quiet, held a sense of resolution. Alexander felt a mix of relief and determination. He knew that lessons had been learned, relationships had been tested, and the future would require cautious trust. But he also knew that with clear eyes, careful planning, and reliable allies, he could face whatever came next. And as the city lights twinkled outside, Alexander prepared for the next chapter, knowing that truth had been uncovered, and with it, the opportunity to rebuild, protect, and move forward wisely. The days following the confrontation in Alexander Reed's office were quiet, but the quiet felt different this time. It was not the ordinary calm of routine work. It was the calm after a storm, a tense stillness that carried reflection and careful thought. The hidden camera had revealed a truth that could not be ignored, and the confrontation with Isabella had confirmed suspicions that had been building for days. Now Alexander faced a new challenge, not only in securing his company but also in rebuilding trust, reorganizing relationships, and moving forward with clarity. Alexander began the day as usual, arriving at the office early while the city outside slowly awakened. The sunlight reflected off the glass towers, but for him, the view was no longer just a reminder of success. It was a reminder of vigilance. Even the most successful people could be caught off guard if they ignored the details. He moved through the office with calm confidence, but each step was measured. Every interaction, every conversation, and every email carried more meaning now. Maya entered shortly afterward, carrying the breakfast tray. She had become a quiet, invaluable presence over the past week, her observations helping to uncover a serious breach of trust. Alexander greeted her with a slight smile. "Good morning, Maya," he said. "Thank you for being part of this. Your careful observations have made a real difference." Maya smiled, though she felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Being involved in such a sensitive situation was new to her, but she had learned something important. Paying attention and acting honestly, even in small ways, could have a large impact. She placed the tray on the desk and nodded. Alexander began the day by reviewing the security measures in the office. He realized that while the hidden camera had been discovered, there was always the risk of other vulnerabilities. Systems were strengthened, access was tightened, and a review of internal protocols ensured that no unauthorized surveillance could happen again. Alexander's experience taught him that prevention was always better than reaction, and today he was determined to protect his company and the people who worked there. Meanwhile, the private investigator provided a detailed report summarizing the findings. Patterns of unusual access, behaviors that seemed suspicious, and evidence of attempted manipulation were carefully documented. The report confirmed what Alexander had already observed. The hidden camera had been part of a larger plan to access confidential information, and it had been executed by someone close. While Isabella had admitted involvement, the report clarified the full extent of the actions and the areas affected. Alexander read through it methodically, absorbing each detail, making plans to act prudently. Once the security updates were completed and the report reviewed, Alexander called a meeting with key senior staff members. He spoke carefully, maintaining authority while addressing the need for vigilance and transparency. "I want to thank you for your dedication and professionalism," Alexander began. "Recent events have reminded us that even in a trusted environment, we must be careful, observant, and proactive. Our priority is to protect our work, our colleagues, and the integrity of this company. This means following protocols closely, reporting anything unusual, and supporting one another with honesty and respect." The team nodded, some quietly relieved that the situation had been handled, others attentive to the lessons being emphasized. Alexander wanted them to understand that the incident, while serious, was also an opportunity to strengthen the company culture. Mistakes had been made, but the future could be more secure with care and awareness. Meanwhile, Maya continued her role in observing subtle patterns, though the intensity had eased now that the immediate threat was revealed. She continued delivering meals and assisting quietly, but her attention to detail remained sharp. Alexander appreciated her perspective. It had been invaluable, and he knew that keen observation, even from someone outside the traditional corporate hierarchy, could be critical in maintaining security and trust. Outside of the office, Alexander also considered the personal side of the events. Isabella had been a part of his life, someone he had trusted deeply. While the betrayal was significant, he realized that confrontation and clarity had provided closure. There were emotions to process, lessons to internalize, and boundaries to redefine. He understood that trust, once broken, required time and consistent action to rebuild, if it could be rebuilt at all. The confrontation had been necessary not only for uncovering the truth, but also for establishing what was acceptable and what could no longer be tolerated. In the days that followed, Alexander focused on strategic planning. He reviewed ongoing projects, identified areas for improvement, and reinforced his relationships with trusted colleagues. The experience had taught him the value of careful observation, thorough investigation, and taking decisive action based on evidence rather than assumptions. Each day became an opportunity to strengthen not only his company, but also the principles that guided his leadership. Maya observed these changes quietly. She noticed how Alexander communicated with staff, how he balanced authority with fairness, and how he emphasized diligence and honesty. She realized that this experience had changed him, making him more vigilant but also more thoughtful. And she understood her own growth as well. By noticing the hidden camera and paying attention to small details, she had become an unexpected contributor to solving a complex problem. Her perspective, though modest, had mattered in a significant way. One morning, Alexander walked through the office, greeting staff members with his usual calm confidence. He paused to speak with a team member who had been particularly diligent during the past weeks. "Your attention to detail has been excellent," he said. "I want everyone to know that noticing small details and speaking up when something seems unusual can prevent serious problems. This is not just about work, it's about protecting each other and the integrity of our team." The message was clear, and the staff responded with nods and smiles. Alexander felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the lessons of the past weeks were being absorbed. The office, once tense with suspicion, now carried a sense of renewed focus and commitment. Maya quietly continued her routine, delivering meals and observing without interfering. She had learned the importance of patience, honesty, and courage. She realized that sometimes the smallest action, simply noticing something unusual, could lead to significant change. And while her role was behind the scenes, she knew it had made a real difference. Alexander also began planning for the future. He recognized the need to establish stronger safeguards, not only in security systems but also in workplace culture. He planned training sessions on vigilance, ethical behavior, and communication. He knew that prevention, awareness, and shared responsibility were essential to avoiding future problems. Even as the office returned to routine, Alexander reflected on the personal and professional lessons he had learned. Trust was a powerful but fragile element, and it required careful attention. Actions, even small ones, could have far-reaching consequences. Observing carefully, listening closely, and acting decisively were skills that could protect both his company and the people around him. Over time, the incident became a quiet memory in the office, but the lessons remained. Alexander strengthened the systems and relationships that had been tested, ensuring that vigilance was maintained without fostering fear or suspicion. The hidden camera, once a symbol of betrayal, became a reminder of the importance of attention, honesty, and preparedness. Maya, having played a key role in uncovering the camera, quietly received recognition. Alexander ensured she understood her contribution had been significant. "You may not have realized it at the time," he said, "but your careful observation helped prevent a serious problem." Sometimes seeing what others miss is more valuable than any job title. Maya smiled, feeling proud but also humbled. She had learned that courage and honesty, even in small moments, could have a profound impact. Her perspective, gained from outside the usual corporate structure, had proven invaluable. In the weeks that followed, Alexander continued to lead with confidence, clarity, and vigilance. He implemented stronger security measures, strengthened relationships with trusted colleagues, and reinforced a culture of honesty and observation. The lessons from the hidden camera incident were integrated into the company's practices, ensuring that the team would be better prepared for future challenges. The office, once a place of tension and suspicion, now carried a sense of careful calm. Employees worked diligently, aware of the importance of observation and integrity. Alexander, reflecting on the events, understood that even in a world of success and power, attention to detail, careful planning, and courage in small moments could prevent serious problems and reveal important truths. As the sun set over the city skyline, Alexander sat at his desk, reviewing the final notes from the investigation. The hidden camera had revealed a secret that could have caused serious harm, but it had also taught valuable lessons. Trust, vigilance, and honesty were essential, and even small contributions from someone like Maya could have an enormous impact. Looking out at the city lights, Alexander felt a sense of closure. The confrontation, the investigation, and the careful observation had revealed the truth and allowed him to act decisively. The office had been tested, but it had emerged stronger, more secure, and more aware. And Alexander knew that with vigilance, careful attention, and trust built on evidence, the future could be navigated with confidence and integrity. The hidden camera, once a source of tension and uncertainty, had ultimately revealed a deeper understanding of trust, responsibility, and the power of observation. Alexander, Maya, and the team had learned valuable lessons, and the company, now more resilient than ever, could move forward with clarity and assurance. The city outside continued its constant rhythm, unaware of the quiet drama that had unfolded within one office. But inside, life had changed. Attention to detail, courage in small acts, and honesty in observation had uncovered the truth, prevented greater harm, and allowed for reflection and growth. And Alexander, gazing at the skyline, knew that the lessons learned would guide him and his team for years to come.